I am not a sports guy. I've never been really good at sports. I've never been a fan of sports. And I've especially not been a fan of basketball. For some reason, whenever I play basketball, the ball always hits me in the head. It's like my head is a magnet for basketballs. So growing up, even after I became an adult, I made sure to keep basketball outside of my walls and away from my head. As adults, we keep our walls with us. Sometimes they even solidify for us as we become adults. And we even have these walls when we're teachers. I was a high school teacher for 17 years at Bishop O'Dowd High School. This is what our campus looks like. Bishop O'Dowd High School, has anyone heard of us? Nobody? We're kind of famous. You should have heard of us. We're like the best school in all of Oakland, California. In any case, even teachers have these walls. Let me give you an example. This is a drawing of what our faculty lunchroom looked like. The PE teacher sat at one table. The drama teacher sat at another table. And the nerdy teacher sat at yet another table. There were a couple of teachers that would go from one table to the next. But for the most part, we teachers stayed where we were most comfortable. We also had our walls. Every now and then, however, something happens to make us go outside of our walls. And for me, books play a key role in that. I told you already that one of the pieces, one of those icons inside of my walls is my Chinese American heritage. That's something I'm really interested in, something I really care a lot about. One day I came across this book called Outside the Paint by Kathleen Yep. Kathleen Yep has these older relatives who all grew up in San Francisco, Chinatown. This was a book about Chinese American culture. These older relatives of the authors, they came from very poor immigrant families. They didn't really have a lot of money, and what they did for fun was they played basketball. They played a lot of basketball. Both the girls and the boys were obsessed with the game. In fact, for a couple of decades, the San Francisco youth basketball leagues were all dominated by these Chinese teams. I read this book. It was a ton of fun. It was very fast-paced. It was about a corner of Chinese American history that I knew nothing about. But it was also about this topic that was clearly outside of my walls. It was about basketball. I enjoyed this book so much that I decided to find other books about basketball and read them. And here are just a few of them. The first one, Slam Dunk, is one of the most popular manga series in the world. It's about a Japanese high school basketball team and the pursuit of their championship. Ball Don't Lie is by a superstar young adult author by the name of Matt De La Pena. Matt and I are friends. I'm just kind of name dropping right there. But Matt isn't just a great writer, he's also a great basketball player. And this book really draws on his experiences as both a Mexican American and a basketball player to tell a wonderful story. And the final one, The Crossover by Kwame Alexander, recently won the Newbery, one of the biggest book prizes in all of America. This is an extraordinary book because the author is able to capture the rhythm of a basketball game through the rhythm of his words. I read these books, and these books acted like an ambassador to me. They were an ambassador to the world of basketball. They allowed me to understand a world that I was never really a part of. I read these books, I got kind of excited about basketball, I wanted to talk to somebody about it. So I started talking to this guy named Lou Ritchie. Lou Ritchie was another teacher at Bishop O'Dowd High School. He was a PE teacher. He's also the coach of the varsity men's basketball team. Now, this is what he looks like in the yearbook. This is what he looks like as a cartoon. Lou's a great guy, but he is not the kind of guy I would normally be friends with. After all, he sat at a different table. He's also an athlete, and I am a nerd. But as we started talking about basketball, we slowly became friends. Lou invited me to go watch the games of his team. So I even got to travel with this team. There was this big tournament in Missouri. This is a photo from that tournament. And as I traveled with this team, I learned how to watch basketball. I'm definitely no expert. I don't think I have like 70% of the rules memorized. But now I get it. I understand why basketball is important. I understand why people like it. And as I followed this team, I got to know Lou a little bit better. What I discovered was that he and I actually have a lot more in common than I originally thought. For instance, instance, Lou loves books, just like I do. He especially loves reading history books. Lou also loves numbers. Now, I love numbers too, even though I didn't include that icon in my previous picture with the walls in it. Lou loves numbers so much that he memorizes basketball and baseball statistics for fun. He had so many of these statistics memorized that when he was a kid, the kids in his neighborhood used to call him the professor. So Lou isn't just an athlete, he's also a nerd. He's like a nerdly. I even have photographic evidence of this. This is what Lou looked like when he was a kid. His glasses are just as big as mine. So I followed this team for a season. I got to talk with Lou and the other coaches and the other players. I even got to sit in on their locker room chats. I got to hear their pep talks. I got to look at their strategies. And during this season, what I discovered was an amazing, compelling story. It was their story. It was a story that was so compelling that I felt like I needed to do a book about it. So my next book is actually my first nonfiction book. It'll be a graphic novel about this basketball team. I'm kind of giving away the ending with this picture right here. So don't tell anyone. So books were really ambassadors for me. Books allowed me to understand basketball a little bit better, which led to my friendship with Lou, which in turn led to me following him and his team around for a season, which led to me now doing a book about basketball. Books can be ambassadors for you too. They can be ambassadors in your lives too. I'm going to give you just a few examples of how this can happen. Number one, they can be ambassadors into the lives of people who are different from you, people from different cultural traditions, people from different religions, people from different ways of life. Number two, books can be ambassadors into topics that you might find intimidating. For me, that was basketball. I talk to a lot of folks who find STEM topics intimidating: science, technology, engineering, and math. And there are some amazing, amazing books that can act as your ambassador into those topics. Books can even be ambassadors into other kinds of books. So for instance, maybe you pretty much only read prose books, books with just words in them, and you've never tried a graphic novel before. Or maybe you're the exact opposite. Maybe you only read graphic novels, and you never read books with just words in them. Well, there are plenty of books that are hybrid books that marry these two different ways of telling stories together. One of my favorites is actually Ambassador Kate's book, Luen, Ulysses, about a superhero squirrel. It's pretty amazing. But these books can help you transition from one kind of a book to the other. So I'd like to end my talk with a challenge to you. And my challenge is that you read without walls. Go find a book that you normally wouldn't read. This might be a book with someone on the cover that doesn't look like you or doesn't live like you. This might be a book about a topic that you had previously thought intimidating. Or this might be a book in a format that you have never really tried before. Read without walls and see what happens. I guarantee it's going to be something amazing. Thank you very much. It was wonderful to have this chance.